Hi everyone, it's Hatsy and I'm back with another Sims 4 video, and I thought it would be a good idea if I opened up the channel to tutorials. So I have never done one of these before and I do not know how good I am at tutorials, but I know for a fact that one of the things which really aggravates me with some of them is the fact that people don't get to the point straight away. So I'm going to try and make this as quick as possible. This is a tutorial about how to make some really cool basement spaces, and this is something that has been requested a lot on the channel. So yeah, I'm gonna try to recreate maybe some of the basement spaces that I've used for some of my castles, so you can apply it to your own builds and it can just kind of give you a rough idea of what I do. So the first thing we're gonna do is we are going to put on the cheat BB.moveobjects. So we don't even need BB.moveobjects just yet. However, when it comes to later on in the build, to give the kind of impression that there are like ditches or, you know, your build's on a mountain or something like that, this is going to be the easiest way for that. So there are a few ways that you can use basements. One of the ways that I've done it in the past, I did this for Hogwarts, so that I kind of chiseled out the underground and I built around it to make it look as if Hogwarts was on a cliff, is I actually built a basement square like that. I mean, you can do it. This is the tricky part and I hate this bit so much. Like with a passion, I hope they change it. So you have to click on it and it says remove ceiling. Now this doesn't always work and sometimes you will see me really struggling with that option because it's not the easiest to find. So yeah, that will answer a lot of people's questions, hopefully, because one of the most like asked things on the channel is how to remove the top of your basement. So that's how I do it. You don't have to do it that way if you don't want to. And what you can do by using this method is if you want to sort of take bits out, which I sometimes do, let's just, you know, build some walls around it. Oh my goodness, that one's in the air. But yeah, so let's take, for example, this one. Let's say I want to work on the shape because that just looks really strange. You can rebuild the ceiling. See what I mean though? That line is really crazy. So yeah, you can build the ceiling back and do it that way. So yeah, that's one of the ways that you can use the basement spaces. Maybe even from this point you can build where you want your building to sit, if that makes sense. I don't know, I'm really tired today from not making much sense. So yeah, you can do that, and I think I have maybe done that like in the past before. You know, it's kind of easy-ish. Yeah, like you just mess around with it and sometimes it can work really well. So now deleting the basement spaces, just be careful because there may still be some stuff under there. What I do actually like to do is customize it. So I think a lot of people will be familiar with this. However, it's really handy because you can just create a really cool shape. You can get a really nice effect to your build, especially if you are creating castles and things like that. So another thing that you can do is you can go down another layer. Be wary if you do go down a second floor like I'm about to do now. It does mean that you can't build a pool on this layer that we're currently looking at. So that may impact your build. So for instance, in the past, what I've done is I've tried to, you know, put a moat around Hogwarts or something and it just says unable to build below minimum level. So I really hope they fix that issue in the future because it is kind of not great. So another thing that you can do is you can build a very thin fence around your first basement floor. So this would be helpful if, for instance, you wanted to paint this floor. Let's say that you wanted it green or you wanted it a certain colour, you didn't want the soil there. I do think it's a bit strange how in The Sims 4 you can't paint this soil because it is the ground. That would be an amazing update in my opinion, if they changed it so that you can sort of spray it whatever colour you want. So now we've done that, it separates layer 1 from layer 2, so the floor's not just going to build back by itself if you click build floor. This is the only way that I know how to do that. So if that's what you're looking for, then that's how you do it. So yeah, hopefully that will blend in a little bit better now. Of course, you do have the line around, but you can camouflage that if you want to. You can probably change the colour actually. You could probably change it to green. I do often use the get to work fence though. There are others that you could probably use. To be fair, you could probably, yeah, you could do a lot. Like, it's not a big deal, I don't think anyway. So we've got this empty mess of a space right here. And this is going to hopefully answer some of the questions that have been lingering on the channel recently. So how do you enlarge rocks? How do you freely rotate them? What I'm going to do is I am going to press this really strange key that is going to come up on the screen because I cannot remember what it's called. I think it's called a bracket key. However, it will be popping up, so I don't need to say it. And you will notice that even with the rock enlarged like this, you can only rotate it a certain number of ways, which, to be fair, aren't that interesting. If I want to freely rotate an object, I press Alt, which allows me to rotate it in any way possible. So yeah, this is really helpful. And believe me, when I found out that the Alt key exists, I was doing this for a very, very long time. It is, I don't know, small things amuse me, what can I say? Now that we have an enlarged rock from using the bracket key and also being able to rotate it in whatever way we want, we can place it anywhere we want to because we have BB.moveobjects on. So if I now turn BB.moveobjects off, which I did by typing in the same cheat, you will now notice that we have an issue. There is an issue. I can't place the item anywhere that I want. So yeah, if I want to overlap objects, then it's BB.moveobjects. So hopefully you can now see why that's useful, why I use it, and why I recommend it for all my builds. So, next rock. What you can also do, if you want to, is you can copy the rock like that. If you press the Shift key, you can freely place them without having to keep going back to each individual rock, because like that's annoying to keep doing that. So it's a really good tip anyway. And what I do is I press Shift and Alt. This is mainly like if I'm doing, let's say, some suburban landscaping on a house or whatnot, like I will use this. So I'll press both Shift and Alt, so I'll be able to move the rocks around whilst at exactly the same time being able to place them wherever I like. And you know, same with landscaping, like you can do whatever you want. This is a really lazy way to do landscaping, but it works really well. So yeah, I would definitely recommend that. And that's how I do mine. So I think apart from that, what I'm going to do next is I'm going to show you how to raise an object. That's something that is sometimes requested about, you know, how do you raise an object and stuff. So from what I know, number 9 and number 0 works. However, sometimes I do actually have to press Control and number 9. I don't know if everyone has to do that. Bear in mind there are some glitches in The Sims 4, so I'm only really telling you what works for my keyboard. You may find that you can use some of the codes that I've given you without pressing the keys that I do, or you know, pressing different ones and stuff, but I don't know how it honestly works. But yeah, so I usually have to press Control and 9 because it doesn't work by itself, and sometimes the bracket key doesn't work by itself either. Sometimes I have to press Control and the bracket key. So number 9 raises the item and 0 brings it down, so that can be pretty handy. Now if we're trying to stack like rocks together, then that's where it gets interesting. I mean, I say interesting, it's as interesting as placing rocks gets. So hopefully showing you the keys that I use will make building a lot easier for you, and this tutorial was helpful. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the real art attack thing, and I'm going to show you one that I made earlier. So here you can see a finished version of a basement that I made. I was actually going to use this one for the build tutorial, but what actually happened was I realized that it would be more helpful with a tutorial to talk about what exactly I was doing at the precise moment, because it's quite difficult to do that from memory. So yeah, this is what I mean though. So, you know, for instance, if you had a castle that you'd want to put somewhere and you'd want to do some like fancy landscaping around it and stuff, you could use this method. And you can also see where I really have bothered to stack the rocks. versus where I really have not. So yeah, this was just supposed to be an example though. This wasn't supposed to be a completely finished one. If I did want to make it look really good and spend some extra time on it, I would probably fill in all these spaces along the walls so that you really can't see the wall blend in at all with it. And yeah, another thing that I did was I added pools to the top section of the basement, or at least the first floor of the basement. So that is the water effect there. And I also created a rock pool, so you really can see here what you can recreate with just rotating rocks, just lifting them up by pressing Control 9 or Control 0 to bring them down where you want to. And yeah, I think as well, merging objects, you wouldn't usually be able to merge rocks with like plants like that, or you know, put a tree in there and stuff, and maybe up close it doesn't look so natural, and maybe you could find a better way to do that. But just for now, I think it's really the most helpful thing that I can show you. This was only supposed to be a quick build anyway, so yeah. Anyway, hopefully this build tutorial has helped you. I would love it if you would let me know what you thought of it in the comments below. Should I carry on doing tutorials? That is a real question here, because I don't know if I'm any good at them. However, if there's stuff that you want me to explain, I absolutely will. One that I was thinking of, maybe for a video next week or something, was actually doing a staircase tutorial. So if you're interested in how I create, like for instance, staircases for mansions and things like that, and how I make it look quite fancy inside and delete the ceilings, similar to how we do it with the basements, but it's just different in a way, mixing it up a bit. I can do that, so please let me know, because that'll be really helpful. Thanks so much for watching it though, and I'll speak to you on the next one.